All right, welcome everyone back to the Small World podcast, Dead Week edition for me. I am currently studying up on finals pretty hard, but super excited to take a short break from that and talk to my co-founder today, Catherine. Catherine is one of these people who kind of make you feel bad about yourself when you see everything that she's accomplished. So I do want to first congratulate you, Catherine, for being the first female founder on the podcast.
Thank you.
Really glad we can have some representation there. Catherine is a Taekwondo champion, a two-time junior world champion, and one-time world champion in Taekwondo. Well, Catherine, by the way, Pumse or Spartan?
Boomsay. It's a good question. Yeah, forms.
Okay, so sidetrack already. As you guys know, I like to do these on the podcast, but in Taekwondo, there's sparring, kind of kicking and punching each other. And then there's forms where you kind of like show technique. You're not fighting anyone. You just you're by yourself. I sucked at that because I really just didn't like Pumse. I was much more of a spar. Anyway, back to Catherine. She was a long time senior engineer at Cash App. Herself and Raf, her co-founder, are repeat successful founders, both having had YC startups in the past, including Raf having exited for around a $500 million acquisition. Catherine is a two-time graduate from Y Combinator, and that does include her current startup, Kernel, which we are here to talk about today. So, Catherine, thank you very much for joining me. And please, could you start just by telling us a little bit about Kernel?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So, Kernel is a developer tool platform. We provide crazy fast browsers for AI agents to use the internet. And so, some of our customers, including Cash App and Rye and Woflow, spin up browsers in production and either run browser automations, automate things on the internet that doesn't have APIs, or they build agents. So Rye is an e-commerce platform that is building kind of an agentic first checkout experience, and they use Kernel under the hood to do that. So you can think of us as kind of the Vercel or Supabase of the browser agent AI agent browser world, where we provide an API that allows developers to quickly spin up a browser on demand, pay per use. We offer all of these features out of the box that make it really easy to work with AI agents and browsers in the internet. Things like a live view where humans in the loop can go and see what their agent is doing. Things like replays where you can easily kind of run an MP4 replay to see what that agent did at any given time. And then solving problems like agents that are accessing credentials as well as bot detection. All of those are things that our platform does really well. And we make a developer API that's super easy for someone to build an AI agent and automate anything on the internet.
And please don't take this the wrong way, but agents right now are super sexy. So everyone's doing agents for your cat, right? But here you are kind of looking at the unsexy side of agents and really looking at like problems and then offering those solutions. So how did you come up with this business idea?
Yeah. So before I started Kernel, I was leading a team of 4 deployed engineers at Cash App and saw a sister team, a team that sat next to us, start to use AI agents in this way. So a little over a year ago, cloud computer use came out. It was a model that basically said, hey, now an LLM cannot just read and understand text, but it can also understand the same user interface that you and I use in our day to day on our computers. So it could open Excel, it could, open a command line interface and type some things in the same way you and I do. And then most importantly, it can access the internet and go to any website and do anything that it wants using that same human interface. And so Cash App, Cash App's QA engineering team started to investigate this new technology to QA not their own websites, not like squareup.com and cash.app, but Cash App's partner websites. So like if you're familiar with Pay in 4 with Afterpay, that's
Hmm.
a Pay in 4 product, a buy now, pay later product. Afterpay is owned by Cash App or Block. And they partner with e-commerce websites like Levi's.com, Nordstrom.com, American Eagle to offer this Pay in 4 service. And what you'll notice on all of these e-commerce websites is that on every product page, there's a Pay in 4, $25.95 with Afterpay. And that exists on pretty much every e-commerce website that offers BNPL. And that's because that kind of keyword Pay in 4 with Afterpay is a really important piece of copy, kind of brand asset that needs to live on that e-commerce website in order for consumers to know that they can use this service. And so the QA engineering team really wanted to start to automate the QA and make sure that our partner websites had that representation. Historically, it's never been possible to automate that QA process. Afterpay works with thousands of merchants. Every single merchant implements their own e-commerce in a different way. So you don't know like what the DOM will look like, how much the HTML will look like when they render a product page. Uh, and so if you're going to write deterministic browser automation scripts, you really can't manage thousands of those scripts at scale. And so in reality, it was simply not a tractable, autonomously solved problem until LLMs came around. And because now you can send a Claude computer use agent to Levi's.com and say, with the prompts, hey, go to this website, click on the women's section, click on a t-shirt, click on any product, it doesn't even matter, and look for this thing. And is it the right text? Is it the right color? Is it the right logo? A vision agent can do all of those things autonomously. And it's a really huge technological unlock that was kind of the impetus of how I started thinking about developer tools, which led to Kernel. Yeah, it's a really exciting use case that I think that also makes perfect sense. And today we power Cash App to enable this, and that's kind of a full circle exciting moment for us as well.
That is awesome, and congratulations on that. I wanted to talk about when you started Kernel. How did you know it was the right time to leave Cash App? Because obviously is a difficult decision in a lot of ways. How did you know it was the right time to start deploying Kernel?
Yeah. I'm pretty old, so I've been around the startup world for over 10 years. I'm straight out of college. I went to UCLA, so also uh have a yeah, no, a Bruin is the way to go. But I had started a YC company straight out of college called Sway Finance. And it was during what I would describe as the last AI wave. AI at that time meant mostly supervised machine learning. So LLMs didn't exist. OpenAI famously was in our Y Combinator batch as like a batch mate. They were a research project
Really?
that was just getting spun up. And people were really excited about the concept of AI, and it meant a very different thing back then. But I kind of like, straight out of college saw what that looked like. And Scale AI was in my batch. And so kind of saw their rise over kind of the past decade as well. Sweet Finance didn't succeed, and I kind of moved on and went to go work at a friend's company, and then went to go work at Cash App. And I would say, like in those past years, had in many ways become like very, very jaded about technology. In some ways, I felt like there was not very much like in technological innovation happening.
Yeah, there was all the Web3 stuff. People were kind of forcing the narrative, I feel like.
Yeah, there was Web3, which still exists. I think fintech really took off in the late 2010s, but by the time I joined Cash App, personally did not feel like there was a lot more innovation that we could squeeze out. The market felt very mature. SaaS in general felt very mature. And then while I was at Cash App, ChatGPT kind of announced, ChatGPT 3 came out, and basically Cash App bought open API keys for every single employee at Block, which was 10,000 API keys. And to go from, and so like my team ended up building one of the first kind of internal knowledge base LLMs. We were using our internal information about our product surfaces and built a chatbot around that in a very short amount of time. And to see, how far that the AI industry had gone when I started in 2017, AI meant a very different thing. There was no tooling around it. OpenAI did not exist yet. We were building our own data pipelines and how to figure out how we're going to get the data to fine tune a model. None of that existed over 10 years ago. And then to be at a public company nearly 10 years later, given an API key and able, and like in a very short amount of time, being able to spin up something very useful, like it had a clear immediate business value, and able to ship that in prod in such a short amount of time was very much an aha moment for me of, whoa, there's something really, really cool here. The technology is totally different. there's clearly, if anyone has, well, at this point, this it's all like most people who have at least tried ChatGPT can have some magical experience. But once you have that first magical moment, you can start to think of all the cool things you can do with that. And I became very convinced that the time, like if there was ever a time to go start another company, you want to do it when the technology is just shifting because there's a ton of opportunity, greenfield space to go and look at problems that maybe didn't have opportunities before.
Yeah, I mean, Y Combinator is like the perfect place to look, but they have all these different like niche like AI applications for, compliance. We had someone on the podcast from Y Combinator for that, like trade compliance. I mean, it's just so many different use cases. I do want to go talk about the future a little bit though, right? Because you're talking about how AI was that aha moment for you, but now you've had it marinating for a couple of years. Where do you see AI in the next couple of years and then in 10 years? Do you think we're at AGI, or are you kind of like me, a little more dubious about that?
It's a good question. Only Sam Altman knows whether we're at AGI at this point.
I'll have him on the podcast at some point. We'll ask him
Bring
the
him on
same thing.
next and ask him the same question, and let's see what he says. In many ways, we're still in the early innings of this technology as well. And so Kernel's been around for about a year. And in that time, even like seeing what people are able to build a year ago to what they're able to build now, we're still very much in the early innings of all the promise that AI offers, particularly in this world of browser automations and computer use agents. I think if LLMs are very, very good at code generation today, that's like one area that they've kind of mastered and are continuing to get very good at. I think where vision models are with computer use is several steps behind. And so when you ask people who want to automate workflows on the internet using computer use, you might hear them say that, oh, but things are still very slow. Things are very expensive, that the models are very expensive. They take a lot of tokens. They're not very deterministic. They don't do things very well. We're still, the industry is very nascent. But if you hold that those things will get better over the next 1 to 5 years, which we did see, in 2017, self-driving cars were the hot innovation of, hey, this thing will transform the world. And it takes many years for a technology like that to really come to fruition. I remember back in those days, people also were dubious about that. They would say like, oh, it's always a couple of years away. It's never going to come to fruition. And yet here we are in 2025 with Waymo's, in San Francisco and the peninsula kind of really, really permeating and like the technology works. And so I feel very confident in kind of computer use as a technology will continue to get more reliable, faster, more autonomous, cheaper. And when we unlock that, I think just like coding is transforming the way that we write software, I think it's going to transform the way that, you know, companies operate, operations happen. It unlocks kind of everything that was rote and mundane that only a human could do. We increasingly are now able to automate that away. And I think that that is going to meaningfully transform the way that businesses are built.
And as you say that, you start to kind of realize where Kernel becomes a 100 billion trillion dollar valuation business, right? Because as agents become more mainstream and more accessible for everyone, you can almost imagine like everyone just has their own agent or two in their pocket. You know, I wouldn't mind that, like, have someone do my homework. This is where Kernel just becomes the platform for everyone to use because it is quite a bitch to kind of have to go, like, access the browser, right? And, like, pass the CAPTCHA. But this is where Kernel can be in everyone's pockets. So, as I understand it now, you guys are B2B, right? But do you see yourselves also becoming, like, B2C at some point if agents become more mainstream? What's the playbook essentially going forward?
Yeah, I think the things that we are really excited about solving are really the developer platform, developer tools, and cloud infrastructure problems. Um, we look to companies like Modal.com or um, Supabase or PlanetScale as exemplar companies that we kind of aspire to be, at least in terms of how much they are loved by developers. And so when we think about the customers that we serve today, we mostly are focused on businesses, but you can also imagine, ChatGPT has a web search feature built into their platform.
Mm.
Anthropic might as well, and maybe other models as well. Under the hood, they are also spinning up browsers and going to do things when you say like, hey, like go to DoorDash.com and like, select me my Chipotle bowl. Today they don't do that end-to-end checkout experience, but under the hood, they are spinning up a browser and kind of stopping, having an agent go do those things and then stopping. And so as we kind of like pull that thread more and like what are the consumer experiences that these LLM providers imagine for end consumers like you and uh, I think that the number of time, like the number of browsers that they will spin up under the hood just starts to explode for every consumer use case. And Kernel's goal and mission is that we will be powering all of those, whether or not that we are the owners of that end consumer experience. We would love for OpenAI to be one of our customers. And for us to power that underlying infrastructure.
That would be amazing. Um, let's go a little off topic here as well, unless you want to talk more about Kernel specifically.
Happy to go anywhere you'd like.
Okay, cool. Because I do have the rare opportunity to ask a repeat Y Combinator founder. What is the most helpful thing about Y Combinator in your eyes?
Yeah. It's a good question. And maybe another question related to that, which we get a lot, is why did you choose to do Y Combinator a second time?
Mm,
Um, Great for multiple reasons. And I say that coming from the lens of when we decided to do YC a second time, we knew it was going to be useful, but I came out of YC this past summer being a huge stan. Like,
mm.
oh, that was undeniably worth our time, worth it, the equity. Huge fan of Y Combinator and everything they're doing. I think for any founder, whether never mind how old they are or whether they've done a startup before, it is so useful to have both like supporters and accountability from the partners as well as your peer batchmates in that very condensed time pressure cooker sort of moments. Um, there is really nothing like it. I think like maybe final season is probably the closest thing you can get to that. And because despite what many people will say, the caliber of people they admit to YC is also incredibly high. And so, when you are around very ambitious people and they are, moving very fast and being incredibly ambitious, it raises your own ambition level in a way that I've just like never experienced anywhere else.
When you
And then,
say, despite
yeah,
what people say, sorry to interrupt.
no,
When
go
you say
ahead.
despite what people say, are there
Mm.
people saying that the caliber isn't that high? I haven't been hearing that too much.
Oh, okay. Maybe I might be in my own Twitter echo chamber. I do feel like I sometimes see people say like, "Oh, YC is over. Like it's too big. They do too many of them. Like, you know, it's not like what Brian Chesky experienced." And like the answer is like 100% true. The Y Combinator is like different than what it used to be in 2009 when PG ran it. Um, but my conclusion after going through this summer batch, nearly 9 years after I'd gone through it the first time is that YC has changed in line with how all of Silicon Valley has changed. But the ethos is still there and the value is still there. And it still accomplishes all of its goals, if not more than it used to.
It kind of has to evolve, right? And especially with
Totally.
AI coming around, like there are just you can't let in way less companies. I believe. How big was your batch in summer of 16? Do you remember?
It was over 100, but it wasn't, I don't remember if it was certainly less than 200. It wasn't more than that. It was on the higher end. But yeah, that was back when they were doing fall and summer and winter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, only two batches, and you could essentially say it's like 4x at this point. Makes sense. I do want to ask you as well, your favorite other than Kernel startup right now.
Ooh. That's a hard question. Can we narrow it down? Like, are we talking early stage? Are we talking late stage?
Let's say
Like, does
in your
Stripe count
batch.
in my batch? Oh, man, I love everyone in my batch. I'll mention a company that Kernel did a hackathon with called Daedalus Labs. Kathy, CEO co-founder, is an incredible human being and entrepreneur. And They say, I've heard at least one VC say that one of their heuristics is like, would they, as a young person, go work for a young founder, like when they're assessing whether or not they want to invest in that company? And Kathy is one of those people where I'm just like, damn, you have that hustle and ambition and fire, and you know, I, you're like, I'm not sure, who knows where the future holds, but when you think about who do you want to bet on that in 10 years they'll have done some crazy stuff, I think she is one of those people.
Awesome. Shout out Kathy then.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. To continue going off topic even more, I do want to talk about Taekwondo a little bit, and that's personally selfish. Actually, that's very selfish because I'm a Taekwondo guy. So, first things first, your favorite boomsay form, and then after that, the actual question being, how has Taekwondo helped you as a founder? Because I'm sure it has. I'm pretty certain you're going to say discipline, but I want to see where you go with this.
I can't really answer the first question because I have a feeling we did different types of Taekwondo. I did ITF Taekwondo, not WTF.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, that answers the
This is
first
a
question.
yeah, niching that not many people will know. So maybe I'll skip that question. What Taekwondo taught me that I think the combination of competition plus Taekwondo, I find very valuable as a founder. In order to compete at the highest levels of anything, I think you start to realize one, the value of hard work and being disciplined and putting in the hours that no one else will. And then I think you also start to realize how much of it is an internal competition with yourself, especially, as a competitive person, if you are successful and winning, you start to realize that it's more about like, how do I then level myself up to the next level? And um, have you ever seen that Michael Phelps photo where it's like he's like in an Olympic race and like everyone is like looking towards him to like see how they match up, and he's just like looking forward. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen that, but I get what you mean. Like, you always like when I was a white belt, I'd always look at the yellow belts and then the blue belts and or I guess purple, then green, then blue, right? And you kind of continue on, and then at some point you're like passing them, you're like, okay, now what, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I had like Olympic level black belts there, so I had a ways to go. But I get what you mean.
I mean,
We can pull this up for the podcast.
it's one of my favorite photos in the entire world.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna screen share this real quick so that everyone can see. So there's Phelps looking forward, and then everyone else trying to figure out.
Like, yeah, where do they stack up? And the reason I love this photo so much is because um, competition forces you to, when you're a competitive person, can be at that point where they are just focused on themselves and confident in themselves that, hey, if I put in the work, if I know myself enough and where I stand in the world, and if I um, am confident in my ability to put in the work I believe I need to put in, I will see the results I want to see. And that is something that I carry as a founder. And I think it's really useful because it's so easy. Being a founder is really difficult for a variety of reasons, but it's really easy to be pulled in many directions by customers, employees, competitors, VCs, and to really be able to have the internal confidence to be like, I know all of these things that are coming, these external stimuli that are pulling me in all these different directions, but I know where I need to go, and therefore, like, I know where the company needs to go. And maybe I don't know all the answers now, but I'm confident in my ability to figure it out. That is something that I have really internalized. I think having competed as since I was a kid in Taekwondo, that allows me to have both the drive and confidence that I think is really required to be a founder in today's day and age where there's a lot of noise out there and it's really hard. It can be really hard to both have confidence and be focused.
I really appreciate that answer because that's definitely something I struggle with, which is really competitive. They call us hostiles for a reason. It's really difficult to focus on yourself and trust in yourself when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. I feel like a lot of the times I was that swimmer looking at Phelps and trying to figure out, okay, how far away am I? But at some point, you kind of have to let go and you kind of have to swim and you kind of have to remember you're in the pool because you love to swim, right?
Yeah,
So
a
I'm there
hundred
with you on
percent.
that. And to add on that too, actually, I was reading the other day, Ben Franklin, big, successful guy. I think you can look at him and say like, okay, he invented a bunch of different things. He helped frickin' America get the independence that they want from England, right? And they asked him, how do you do this? And he kind of thinks about it for a while and he goes, well, I kind of hold my values true to myself. I wrote them down when I was really young and I always keep them in my pocket. And it just reminds me of what I stand for and what I strive for. So to essentially echo what you're saying, I think it is really, really easy to get caught up in so many different things, especially for people young. Like founders are young. You hear all the time how, they kind of go off the rails. They get like 10 million, $15 million in VC funding and they're fucking partying all the time. It's not easy for sure. So I really do appreciate this kind of advice that you're giving here because it helps me personally. And I'm sure it helps a lot of other people as well.
And it goes
Um,
back to that first point where I had, it's one of those things where to take any smart person and just give them enough time. And so if that's holding that to be true for you and your friends, then all you have to do really is like figure it out what it is that you want and trust the process. And in 10 years, I'm 100% confident you and your friends will have done some amazing things.
And I always like to think to myself too, is it is the process though, right? Like if whatever values I have, whatever I figure out that I want to do, if I'm spending 10 years just trying to get to that goal, it's going to really fucking suck when I get there. But if I'm actually just doing things that I like, that's kind of what I'm working on right now. Is at the end of the day, like whatever internship you get, whatever you're learning right now in school, at least for me, it doesn't matter as much as like just enjoying the journey of self improvement, of exploration, of learning. And that's kind of the inspiration for the podcast as well. The opportunity to talk to people like yourself is something I'm really grateful for.
Very cool. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Catherine, I know we're up on time, and I do understand that being a founder, you don't have much time to do anything else but Kernel. So I do want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I would also like to say thank you again for just being very open about so many different things, talking about yourself as well as building your company. This is where we do sign off, though. So thank you, everyone, for listening to the Small World podcast. And thank you, Catherine, again for hopping on.
Thanks, Takito. Have a good one.
Yep.